working at different levels. I presume that all of you are in higher education institutions and catering to higher education needs of the country. So keeping those things in mind, we all of us are aware that National Education Policy 2020 has been in the place, and the Ministry of Education, Government of India, has taken many initiatives to see that how this policy becomes reality and achieves the set target which has been prescribed by the policy. So that is the departure that we can see from the earlier policies. So if you look at 1986 policy, till 2020, there are 33 years that has been lapsed. And we are not able to achieve the aspirations of 1986. For example, universalization of elementary education. We are not able to achieve 100% target in that field also. So it means that there is certain lacuna in our policies, in our programs and our implementation. And to overcome those lacunas that were there in earlier policies, the present policy 2020 has been visualized and it is being implemented simultaneously. Okay, as an example, you can realize that academic credit banks are established and all undergraduate and postgraduate courses in the higher education institutions are made to go into the credit-based system. And many of the universities and many undergraduate and PG courses have adopted choice-based credit system. And all these documentations, assessment process are going to be placed in DigiLockers, which is going to be used based on digital technology. And therefore, we can see that this policy only doesn't speak to implement it in and try to see that whatever is the target fixed by the policy is likely to be achieved in those targeted periods. So it is in that way, many of the things are in place already. Even similarly, we have a national testing agency, which is a national common test agency, through which all kinds of admission to any university for any courses can be opted. And therefore, it is one examination for all courses is the mantra that has been preached and that is being implemented. So like this, you can see the many salient features of the policy NEP 2020. Okay, so it is, as you've seen that this policy has been evolved in a different approach, that is from bottom to top approach. It is in the reverse order. This policy has been evolved and drafted, and it has started from the grassroots level, starting from the village level, Gram Panchayati level, at the school level. All the stakeholders are involved, giving their views and suggestions regarding formulation of the national policy. So it means to make that all people are involved in policy formulation and they own it up and they have the responsibility of achieving the targets. So indeed, it is in that spirit, the bottom-top approach has been adopted. And in that process, thousands of meetings across the varieties of Gram Panchayat, at the district levels, at the block levels, at the state levels, at the regional level, at the national level, various consultative meetings are held. And as you know that various committees were formed to finalize the draft national education policy. And finally, under the chairmanship of Kasturi Rangan committee, this policy has been formulated and it has been accepted by the ministry and the country. And you can see that there is a lot of involvement of all kinds of people, all walks of people in that policy making process. So you cannot say it is only ideas of few which has been thrust upon many. So it is ideas of the many which has been synthesized and put in a more meaningful fashion. So it is in that way, this policy NEP 2020 has a significant departures. And the policy is also looked at bringing again structural reforms, followed by curricular reforms, then followed by the assessment reforms, and finally leading them to bringing reforms in vocational education and even in alternative educational systems also. So it is in that way the policy gives reforms in all kinds, which are the essential component of education. Okay, so it is in that way. If you look at that, first is the structural reforms that we can see. The entire school structure has been restructured.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Hello. Sir, slides are not moving, sir.
No, I'm not looking into the slides now. Okay, I'm giving the general information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have not come to my topic now. Okay. So it is these kinds of informations that you can see that the school structure reforms has been initiated. Now, earlier we had 8 plus 7 plus 3 plus 2 plus 3 patterns. Okay. 10 years of schooling plus 2 years of senior schooling, then 3 years of graduation, then 2 years of PG courses. All these things were there. Now it has been restructured and put it as 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 up to the schooling. And again, all undergraduate courses are converted into 4 years courses and PG courses are 2 years with multiple dimensions into those. So that means there is a structural reforms that has been suggested by the policies. And it doesn't only restrict to structural reforms, it also says what should go on in each of those structures and the stages by bringing in the curricular reforms, how that curriculum should be looked at, and how is that knowledge that is being given to the learners or experienced by the learners at different levels are going to be internalized, and they will become competent enough to use that knowledge and apply it in the realistic context. So it is in that way, it gives us the varieties of curricular reforms. It talks about varieties of pedagogies that teachers can embrace and use it at different stages, starting from your toy-based pedagogy, playway method, art integrated learning, then health and physical education integration, okay, integration of different discipline, multidisciplinary approach, multilinguistic, multicultural approach. For all the dimensions have been emphasized in the curricular reforms. And based on those reforms, you can see that the curriculum frameworks are emerging. Okay, the policy talks about the framework, 4 frameworks to be developed based on the policies. Earlier, from the previous policies, we were having only one curriculum framework for the school education sector. Now, the policy insists and says that we should have 4 curricular framework. Of the 4, 2 of them are already on public domain. The one is the National Curriculum Framework for Foundational Numeracy and Literacy. It has been published in 2022 by NCERT. And again, Curriculum Framework for School Education has been published in 2023. And now we are expecting 2 more curriculum, one in the teacher education, that is National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education, which is to be brought out by NCTE in collaboration with NCERT. In joint collaboration, this document has to be brought. And to make that education is a lifelong learning activity, emphasizing that they say that we need to bring out the curriculum framework for adult learning. So they are giving emphasis that no people is left out. Even if you look at the age sector, every age sector people are being taken care of, and according to their age levels or their abilities, one can explore the way in which they can acquire knowledge or education for their own benefits. So it is in this way the policy talks about these kinds of curricular reforms, and based on that we'll have varieties of frameworks. Based on the framework, there will be varieties of revisions in the curriculum at school level, even at the higher education level. And based on those revisions, you can see the reforms in your syllabus, change in the syllabus, taking care of the need of the current situation, which demanded by the industrial 4 revolutions, and the changes that happens in the advancement of science and technology, including your artificial intelligence, robotic, and machine learning dimensions into that teaching learning process. So therefore, the policy is trying to look at that, how we can make the education as the requisite of the society and how those demands are met by the education so that we are able to meet the challenges of the 21st century. So it is in that way the policy takes care of all the aspects related to education and it involves into the state.
ಬುಕ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗ್ತಾವ ಅಂತಾವು ಬುಕ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ವರ್ಕ್ ಬುಕ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗ್ತಾವ ಅಂತ್ರಿ
Jadhav sir, please mute your mic.
Yes. Okay. Kindly mute if those who are not speaking. Okay. Yes. Fine. You can see that these are the changes, departures we can see from earlier policies to these current policies. And accordingly, to make the policy to work and to become more meaningful, there are systems which have been already put into place. So that is the fact that you need to acknowledge that and see that this policy is not going to be in only document form. It is going to be in existence in reality in the days to come. So how best we are going to equip to meet those requirements and equip ourselves to become competent enough to do that. So it is in that dimension of the policies. The policy also talks about what is this students' diversity and how inclusive education is a need of the hour and it is a demand of the globe and how teachers can address these issues. So it is in that perspective, this theme has been allotted for orienting the colleagues on these aspects. I have divided this into two parts for this 2 sessions. In the first session, I'll be talking about what is student diversity and how that student diversity has been visualized in NEP 2020, in what perspective, and what are the ways they try to meet these diversities as per the NEP 2020 document. In the second part, I'll be looking into how that student diversity and inclusive education component are to be looked at in a very holistic manner and how each one of us should become an inclusive teacher and what are the essential factors of becoming inclusive teachers and what is the needs of the inclusive education and how do we accommodate, facilitate those factors in our duties and responsibilities is what the second part of that. So it is in that perspective, I am dividing these two into 2 parts. So in the first part, I'll be addressing only about the student diversity related issues and what NEP talks about it in that perspective. Okay. The first slide now we are seeing in what is the exact meaning of diversity that we come across in varieties of sources of knowledge in terms of encyclopedia or dictionary or any other thing that is available to us. From those, these are the essential meanings that we can derive. What that is, they say that diversity means it is the state of being diverse. So being diverse means, so you may be diverse within yourself or you may be diverse among the group of people. So that is diverse means being different from others. Okay, so it is in what way you are different, you can see within ourselves, whether it is socially different or intellectually different or emotionally different or what ways we are different can be visualized when we go on doing introspection within ourselves. And that is the thing that we have to look at. And second way of looking at it is defined as the condition comprising several distinct elements. So that means it doesn't limit to only one particular set of situations or context. It may vary in different contexts. In that also we may find different variations. The variations that you see may be termed as diversity. That is what the meaning is. So if you want to look at it from the science biological perspective, that is in terms of cell and entities and other things, it says that it is the extent of variation of living things found in a specific ecosystem. So that means living organism has to be seen in a ecosystem. So that means there is a habitat. In that habitat, human beings are living. So in that habitats, how other things are also coexisting along with the human beings. So in that variations, how each one are making accommodations and adjustments. So that is what diversity means. The other way of looking at it, it is in fact the fact of there being many different things existing together in a group. So that is, though you are in a group, like for example, if we consider all of us are there for refresher course as one group. In this group also, we have many variations. There are many teachers of varying experiences, varying age factors, okay, varying subject background. We are together trying to understand the common aspect of NEP 2020. So this makes the differences among ourselves. And with those differences, we try to understand the common factors, and accordingly, we make our own understandings of those facts. So that is what we mean by, though we are existing differently, but in a group, we can also live together. That is what that means. The last one says, the fact of many different types of things or people being included in something, a range of factors, okay, that they are living together. So that is the another factor that we can try to look at it. Okay, so that means to say that in any situations that you come across, if you look at the human beings also, even if you look at our classroom also, so in the classroom also, though the class says that it is for a particular course or a particular subject, within that we can find many variations in terms of physical or mental or their cognitive abilities. There may be variation. So that means we are addressing the diverse conditions in majority of the situation in the classroom or even outside the classroom also. This situation exists. Now, extending to that, the encyclopedia meaning says that the diversity has many dimensions. Among them, some of them are race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socio-economic status, age, physical abilities, religious beliefs or political beliefs or other ideologies are the some of the dimensions of diversity. Okay, so whichever you consider from this perspective, if you look at them, then you can say, yes, there are different diversified people having these diversified background are coming together and trying to address a common issues. So if you are looking at this from different backgrounds, so this gives contribution to diversified factors. And we know that in India, it is a democracy is existing because of unity in diversity. So that is a biggest strength in our democracy. Though we vary in terms of many factors, but all of us are united when we come to the country as one. And that what is that unifying factor? How is that unity is brought about? Is once again another factor that needs to be explored and studied in depth. Okay, one cannot generalize and say this is the unifying factor. So it varies from context to context, situation to situation, and time to time. But this has shown that though we are different in many aspects, when it comes to a national concern or the commonality, so we come together and work together. So that is what the diversity is emphasizing, and it gives us the enriched strength in doing this activity. And what are the kinds of diversities that we are able to see in any social context? So these are the major things that we are trying to look at it. So there are 4 major diversities that you can generally see. Globally, we can observe them. One is the linguistic diversity. So linguistic means it is the language that we speak, that we learn, and that we use for our day-to-day activity. Okay, we know that in India, there are thousands of language speaking people, and each language is used for better communication. So that it is for understanding oneself and express oneself to others and try to know the others in a better manner. So it is in that way I use language as a communication tool. So that language, we learn it in many ways, in many vernacular languages or in any other languages. So that helps us to see the diversity. So it means to say that here, though the languages are many, they are to be used as a tool. And if you learn many languages, it helps you. It has an advantage of knowing the subject in a better manner. So no language becomes a barrier for better understanding. So it is for us to have our open-mindedness in learning different languages for better understanding of the subject or the universe. So that aspect we have to. Next is the social cultural diversity. So that means learning is a social activity, and in that context, the culture in which the child has been reared up, brought up, and is sent to the school also reflects all those characteristics in the school. As we know that school is the miniature of society, what the society characteristics are there, same characteristics can be seen even in the classroom in the form of learners in the class. So therefore, whatever the social factor, cultural factors are existing outside the school are seen inside the classroom in form of students. So I find the variations. Okay. So in terms of culture means it is the way in which we dress up, the way we eat our food, the kind of food that we eat, the kind of festivals that we observe, the kind of rituals we perform, all this becomes components of the culture. And we follow the same culture, same social pattern, even in our school, wherever it is situated. So it is in that way. So the social cultural diversity also influences our educational system. Next is the economic diversity. So it is economic means here it is the source of earning money and the way money is spent and how it is used for developmental activity. Now, does everyone has the equal opportunity of earning money? So what is that is in terms of finding a vocation or a job and what that job requires and what is a competency one should have and how one should develop those competencies within himself and try to acquire the jobs is another issues that we need to look at it. So therefore, this creates a lots of gaps between the people who have acquired the skills and those who have not acquired the skill. Based on this, they get job, they get money, and because of this financial earnings, so there is a diversity among the people in the society. And the last one is the gender diversity. So it is basically it is a biological factor. So we consider gender as now at present as 3, but in the worldwide they talk in terms of LGBTQ trend. Okay, but here we talk about based on the biological sexual orientation, we talk about male, female, and the third gender or the transgender or neutral gender. So it is these. Why? Because they say that though human beings are same, their physical structures are same, because of their sexual orientation, change in the sexual orientation, how that brings in difference. How is that is to be looked at it. So it is in that way, these diversities are seen in any society, any country, if you go across. So these are the basic diversities that we can see in the society. Now, when you come to class, okay, when you come to class, these are the diversities which we are likely to see. Okay, you can see in your students in any context. If you look at them, you are able to look at it. So is our classroom homogeneous? No, they are not homogeneous. Okay, there are heterogeneous group of people sitting in my class. So heterogeneity persists in my classroom because students are coming from different social background, different cultural background, different religious background, okay, different economical status background. So even if there are in a cosmopolitan city, if you are there, then I see the difference even in the language also. So I see the people coming from all these dimensions. So therefore, my classroom has diversified environment. So because of these diversities, I find variations among all the learners' abilities. But if you keep that diversities as aside, but still, because these diversities also impacts the learning patterns. Okay, because learning is a social activity. The learning happens through discussions, interactions, deliberations. Okay, all this activity has to happen. Only then that real learning happens in the individual's mind. So when such a thing is happening, even learners and the learning process also differs. The first and foremost is you have to understand what is the learning style of each of the learners. So styles are nothing but which is the dominant sense organs that learner uses for making learning. Okay, which is the sense organs that he uses dominantly to make the learning to the maximum extent. That is the dependency of the sensor. As we know that learning happens through 5 sense organs. So if you involve all the 5 sense organs in the learning activity, the learning becomes more enriched. But we don't involve all 5 sense organs together. So we predominantly use one and subsequently use the some other sense organs in between them. So it is from this perspective, based on the research studies, it has been proved that we as a learners predominantly use 3 styles for our learning, depending upon the kind of sense organs we predominantly use. And based on that, they classify them as adult. That means those who depend on just listening, hearing, and use the ear as the predominant source for acquiring knowledge. If that is the main dominant strategy one has, then you can consider yourself as adult learner. That means who can just listen to radio talk or listen to audio recordings, make meaning out of that, and make your own understandings of that. So if you are of that kind, then you can say that you are an adult learner. Then if somebody says that, no, whatever you are saying, I cannot imagine the abstract ideas that you are talking about. I want to see them in some kind of picture forms. Okay, so my listening should be supported by seeing the visions. So that means I need to have some visual clues. Unless and until you project something in front of me, I cannot make sense of that. So if you are trying to say that I want to see, then I want to listen to that and make a better understanding, then you say you are a visual learner. So that means you are looking at your eyes as the major source of knowledge and trying to make meaning out of that to the maximum extent. Okay, for that kind of learners, you require varieties of video recordings, where in the video recording you have the picture as well as audio. You can make sense and try to relate what has been said and what has been shown. You can relate them and try to make your own imaginations or image and get the clarity of that. So if you are of that kind, then you are a visual learners. And the third category says that no, whatever you show, whatever you say, I will not believe unless and until I experience it. Okay, unless and until I feel it. So that is by manipulating. I need to touch it. I need to feel it. I need to rotate it. I need to do varieties of activity with that object. Only then I am able to learn many things. So that means it says that they become tactile. So that is here, they use 3 sense organs. One is eye, ear, and the fingers or the skin for touching and feeling. So it becomes multi-sensory learning. Okay, if you involve more than one sense organ into learning process, then learning becomes more meaningful and it has a clarity in their understanding. So these 3 kinds of learners are there in the classroom. So when I am going to teach to the student the same concept, the same lesson or the same topic, I need to say that there are different kinds of learners. I need to cater to their needs. That means I should go to the class with some teaching learning material. I should have some chart, or I should have some video recordings, projections, or I should have some model to present them in the class. If it is possible to do all these activity, then you say you are able to cater to all kinds of learners in your class. So if you say I'm only using lecture method, then you are only supporting the adult style of learners. And if you are projecting something on the television or on the computer, you are supporting only the visuals, and to some extent, adults are going to benefit it, and the tactiles are going to be neglected, totally neglected. So therefore, these styles of learnings are each one of us have within us, and you can see, and the same kind is seen among the learners also, how this has to be looked at, addressed, you have to verify, you have to know that. The second diversity you can see is the pace of learning. The pace is nothing but the rate of learning. The amount of knowledge that they receive, it has to be internalized. So that means they have to transform that knowledge into their own processes by making varieties of cognitive activities and make a sense, a meaningful sense out of that. So that is what the learning is. For making that kind of process, some will take less time, some will take less time, some will take very minimum time. So based on the time required for making meaning out of what learning is, so we can categorize them as slow learners, average learners, and fast learners. So that means here, every learner doesn't learn in the same rate of learning. They have their own pace of learning. Accordingly, I need to provide sufficient time for their cognitive processes. That we have to keep in mind. Then participation in learning, when learning situations are given, you are prompting them, encouraging them to involve in that. Some of them will voluntarily involve, so we call them as active learners. Some of them are forced to be involved in the process. We call them as passive learners. So you should understand that who are active learners, who are passive learners. So active learners they volunteer themselves, come forward to do the activity, and passive learners are to be forced into the learning act. So these two types of learners will be there. Then learning methods. The teacher adopts varieties of pedagogical approaches here. And each approach comes with the varieties of methods here. And each method has its own advantage and disadvantages. And the teacher has to analyze this in the context of the knowledge he is going to deliver or transact in the classroom. Based on that, we have varieties of methods. So some of them are inductive method, where the new idea is to be created or introduced, we use inductive. If already ideas are there, you have to reuse it and apply it to the new context, we go for deduction. If you ask them to explore on their own, we go for discovery. And if you want them to demonstrate the ability of using all the knowledge and in a new situation, we go for problem solving approach. So there are varieties of approach, like even role play is there, inquiry method is there, okay, experimental based learning is there, project based learning is there, activity based learning is there. So which method you are going to use and which method supports what kinds of learners? It is this decision teacher has to make and say that that same method must be able to reach to the learners in a maximum ways. In that way, you have to choose the varieties of method. And similarly, we have varieties of assessment procedures available to us. Okay, and the learners can respond to your assessment procedures in different ways. They can do it in this way also. There are oral assessment. You're asking oral questions, students can give oral response. You're asking them to provide evidences in the written form, expression in written form. So you have question answer activities there. So if you ask them to know, I give questions there and you have to perform by experiment or project work and demonstrate that your understanding. It is performance-based testing is there. And if you want to see the progress of the learner continuously and monitor their progress, then you have the portfolios and having the collection of the best practices the learner has, best achievement that he has, and he can reflect on his own progression and try to see what best still can be done for making further improvement can be looked at. And finally, we talk about the rubrics where teacher looks at the task given to them, evolves the criteria and assess them against each of those criteria and take a comprehensive view for making a realistic, authentic judgment on the performance or the acquisition of the knowledge. So it is in that way, within the classroom also, we see these kinds of diversities. Then now, how is this diversity seen in the new education policy 2020? The policy talks about these diversities as socio-economically disadvantaged groups, SEDG. Okay, this is the group nomenclature they are given for that. And they say that these are broadly categorized in the following ways. There are 5 categorizations. They are pinpointedly highlighting it. One is the gender identities. Okay, as we know that earlier also I spoke about it. So it is only promoting the female and transgender individuals. Okay, that means here we need to empower the girl child and promote her, provide education, and also make her empowered in all sectors, including economical empowerment has to be provided. So it is in that way we try to do it. Why they talk about gender identities? So India is male-dominated society, culture is there, and girl childs are not encouraged for going for higher learnings or any other kind of activities till now. Okay, till the past centuries. Now the situation is changing. They are also advancing and trying to acquire all those factors. And the society is believed that if both men and women are equally treated, have the same accessibility, then the society progresses and the nation also develops. It is in that perspective, they say that gender identities must be recognized and must be addressed. Then social cultural identities. So they talk in terms of the different castes that we have, which needs a democratic safeguarding and the provisions to for their upliftment. So that includes scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward communities, and minorities are the groups which they put under the label socio-cultural identities, because each of these castes, each of their society has their own unique cultures, and these are lending themselves to varieties of diversities. And then we have to look at the geographical identities. So we know that India is a country of rural villages. A village, it is basically the village which makes up the nation, and therefore they are to be empowered with all kinds of facilities that we have. So we classify our geographical identities into rural and urban, classify them. So what is that? The rural factor component consists of what is the characteristics of urban component, what is the advantage rural students are not having, and what is that urban students are having better advantages, how these disadvantages can be minimized by providing facilities to in the rural sector also is what this geographical identities are looking at. And therefore it focuses are to focus students coming from villages, okay, remote village, it can be small town, and even it is an aspirational distance. So you may be aware that in the country, in every state, there are a number of districts which have been identified as aspirational districts. Prior to this policy, these districts were treated as educationally backward district. Okay, so that means in all sectors of your development, if you consider for National Developmental Index, in all those index, these districts were at the bottom levels only. So the initiative is to see that these backward districts also come to the high performing districts within the state, and every state should eliminate these kinds of districts of any backwardness in any factor. And therefore, these aspirational districts are identified based on the parameters, and they have been given special attention with all necessary facilities to be given to them. Okay, in Karnataka, Yadgir and Raichur are the two aspirational districts. Okay, similarly, in every state, there will be one or more than one districts which are being labeled as aspirational districts, which draws the special attention, and every sector, including education, health, irrigation, sanitation, drinking water, electrification, all facilities are to be given to them. They must be empowered so that over a period of time, they will also meet the forward districts norms also. It is in that way these aspirational districts have been created, are identified, and supports are being provided. And the next is the diversity group we can see in terms of disabilities. Okay, for these disabilities, so we'll talk about that in the later part of that. So we know that disabilities means it can be the social disability or it can be the physical disabilities that we have within us. So those things will hamper us to perform the duties or perform the activities as a normal person does. So if that deformity is there within us, which doesn't enable us to perform as expected, we call that all those things are disabilities. Now the focus is also, apart from whatever disabilities which has been listed earlier also, they say that now we should also focus on specific learning disabilities. Okay, so that means here even in the learning process also there are varieties of disabilities, and the teachers must focus on that and address those disabilities in a more harmonious way. And finally, they consider socio-economic conditions. Okay, so where they consider these group of people as coming under the very backward factor of socio-economic conditions. So they are migrant communities, low-income households, vulnerable situations, victims of or children of victims of trafficking, orphans, including children in urban remote areas, slum areas, or even the urban poor. Okay, to address this group of people, you have seen that Government of India has already introduced a reservation in the name of economically weaker section. Okay, 10% of the quota is reserved for economically weaker section. So it doesn't depend on any caste, any religion. So anybody who is not having the economic power as per the prescribed limit, they come under that, and based on that limitations and activity, one can get the benefits that has been given for all other community groups. So it is in that way, these are the five groups that have been considered as SCDG as per NEP 2020. So that means here, these are we have to consider all of them in a holistic manner, not taking them individually and labeling in that perspective. So this is what we have to make our orientation of these groups in this manner. Next, the policy talks about equitable and inclusive education. It is learning for all. Okay, this is the NEP 2020 document which you might have read and downloaded from the NCERT, Ministry of Education website, which has got 62 pages. Okay, and it has got nearly 27 chapters divided into 4 areas. In that, we are addressing the chapter 6, which comes under school education. And the policy also says that you have to read this school education with the chapter 14, which is there in higher education, to make a better understanding of what exactly is meant by diversity and inclusive education. So it is in that context, we are taking up the chapter 6, which talks about equitable and inclusive education. It is learning for all. So all includes even the SCDG group should also be included, and equity must be ensured. So that is the essence of this particular theme. So the first point, it says that education is the single greatest tool for achieving social justice and equality. Okay, the policy believes that education is only the single tool which can empower every category of people to get equality. Okay. So it is in that perspective, education is given more importance. To attain the social justice and equality, through education only can be attained. No other factors will enable us to achieve these 2 components. So in that way, inclusive and equitable education is an essential goal in its own right, and it is also to ensure the achievement and inclusive of equitable society, and every citizen in the country should have the equal opportunity and have the equal probability of contributing even to the national building act. So it is in that way, the equitable conditions has to be created, the ground playing levels for every category of people to have the accessibility, and then nurturing in them and flourishing in those situations is what the essence of this, the first point of the policy. And the third point, it talks about the critical problems and recommendation regarding ECCE, that is early child care education, foundation literacy and numeracy, access, enrollment, attendance, which have been discussed in chapter 1 and 3 of the NEP 20 document, also should be looked into very carefully, and they must be submerged into your SCDG group, which is underrepresented, and for disadvantaged groups also you need to consider and try to provide all these activities for these categories of people. So that is what this 6.3 is emphasizing. And 6.4, it says that there are varieties of policies and schemes which have been already implemented, which are there in place. Okay, for example, in school education sector, all the inclusiveness and the equity components are implemented through Samagra Shiksha. Earlier, it was known as SSA, and for higher level, it was called as RMSA. For university level, it is called as RUSA. Okay, Uchatar Rashtriya Shiksha Abhiyan. So all these levels, different abhiyans have started to ensure that social justice and equality is met to are given to SCDG group in a very significant manner. So each of those policies and the schemes that has been implemented gave varieties of opportunity for different peoples to avail those facilities and come forward, and mainstreaming of them is also looked at it. Okay. And those which are being already successful, which you believe that these schemes are giving good results, they need to be significantly strengthened and must be carried forward. So that is what the policy says. You cannot discard the old ones if they are very successful, tried out, trusted. You need to continue them. Along with that, if you want any new scheme to be introduced, the states and the centers are free to introduce those schemes and act programs. That is what this policy says. Next, it is also say that take into account the research. That means any program that you design, any schemes that you introduce must have a sound research evidence base. You cannot take the public opinion and do the schemes. Okay, you should have a solid evidence, empirical evidences that you are going to get only by research activity. So carry out the research, whichever the program or scheme you want to bring in. Based on that research, empirical findings and evidences, you formulate a programs and scheme. Without that, don't try to implement any program in a very hasty manner. So it leads to varieties of what I say, consequence problems one has to face in the later stages. Okay, so it is in that way that say that research must be carried out in all areas, and based on that, you need to formulate varieties of schemes and programs. They give an example like providing bicycle, organizing cycling and walking groups to provide access to the school in the school in the country, promoted the girls' education. So in the beginning of the providing cycles were given to only the girl child in the school, not to the boys, to ensure that girls, because of the distance between home and school, they need not drop out. There is no transport facility. Because of this reason, they should not drop out. So to empowering them to become independent, self-reliant on their own abilities, so enabling them to ride a cycle, developing their physical stamina, and making their independent travel is what this activity promoted. And if it is successful, means you try to continue that. So it is these kinds of schemes and activities that you need to do. It must have a solid research base on which your program should formulate. Next, it also says that you have to provide access to the all kinds of people for all categories of SCDG that you have looked into. All of them should have access to the schooling. So it is in that way they say there can be alternative forms of schooling. It doesn't talk about everybody coming to the same school structure. If they are not unable to come to schools, we need to have alternative schooling patterns into that. So it is like open schooling can be there. So having KSOU universities or IGNOU universities or national open schooling system, NIOS can be there. So like these alternative school arrangements are there so that anybody who is dropped out at any level can have access to that and try to complete their schooling or educational or literacy goals. So that is what you need to look at. Then schools providing quality ECCE reap the greatest dividends for children who come from families of economically disadvantaged. So that means here every school should have a feeder school. Every feeder school must be existing within their complex only. So therefore, it is a must for each school to have their early childhood care education classes, which they call it as early schooling in the name of nursery or kindergarten, must be established within the school system itself. So that means school from 1 to 12, what was the concept? Now it has to expand from year preschool to class 12. Or even in the same complex, even if the plus 2, even the undergrad graduations are there, then you can say school from initial stage up to the final post-graduation also, you can continue in the same complex. So that is what the idea of the schooling, the policy is talking about. And it is also says that by doing all these kinds, if the nursery schools are there within the same complex, it is likely that the same nursery child, when it is attained age of 6+, then it is enrolled into the class 1 of the same school. So there is no child going for different schools can be seen. So therefore, you have to look at your feeding schools. Are the feeders children to your next enrollment structure should be looked at, enriched, and you have to create your own feeding system into your classroom context. So it is in that way you can look at it. Now, at the highest level, you can see that there are many courses, and the university prescribes that if there are no minimum number of students who opt for those courses, the disciplines will be closed. If that is the situation, then you think of the consequences. So those faculties who are there in the department for doing that activity, so they will be losing their job. Okay, but how long the university is able to sustain them without having a course is another bigger question. So it has all social effect and economical effect and other effects, also rippling effect, are going to be seen. So to curtail that, so whoever is the clientele, if you want them, if the feeder schools are there, in that kind of learners are learning those activity, so you may not face these kinds of situations in your enrollment procedures. So that is what they say. You need to ensure that your feeder schools are strengthened, and from the same feeder schools, your courses also will be streamlined. So that is what you need to look at it. Then he also says that every schools at different levels, if you can have the counselors or well-trained social workers, even that is also very good. So that you can see that if any child has any problem and likely to drop out from the system, can be stopped, and he can be mainstream and brought to the schooling system in a very better manner. And you can also ensure that the attendance improves in the school. So that is regular attendance is a must, and the school learner should attend the class regularly, and learning should happen continuously. And therefore, if it is continuity is there, then we can ensure that whatever is the learning outcome that has been stipulated can be attained, and that can be seen in the days to come. So it is in that way we are trying to address these issues. And even they say that it should be focused in the rural areas and also in the urban poor areas also. These components must be looked at in depth. And then it shows that you have to give more focus on the aspirational districts. And these characteristics of aspirational district is it may have any one of those SCDGs in larger number. For example, it may have the people belonging to one community in larger population. Maybe it may be SC dominated area or ST dominated area, or it may be tribal area, or it is minority area. So it is these kinds will qualify for aspirational district. So it needs a special attention and special empowerment. All the assistance, all the supports from all departments are pulled in, and every opportunity is given, provided, so that there is no hindrance for getting educational access is being ensured in those districts. And if such districts are there, if such geographical areas are there, then the policy says that you declare that area as special educational zones. Okay, in industries, if you see that there are SEZ, okay, there are special economic zones. Those special economic zones create a particular type of industry, and that industrial facilities is promoted by Karnataka Industrial Developmental Authority, KIADB, and they provide even financial assistance through banks by providing loans and enriching them to establish their factories or plants, and providing employment, and also providing the economic activities to boom up in that particular area. So that is the SEZ concept in industrial area. Here also they say that same thing, you need to look at from the social perspective, from SCDG perspective. If they are there, you declare it as special economic educational zones and provide special assistance and ensure that all these are provided, and they also mainstream, and they can become competent with the other group of people in any other districts or in the state. So that is what the special education zones creations are talked about. Then it talks about empowering the women, okay, across all underrepresented groups, whichever group you take it, any religion, any caste, any race you take it. So it talks about all women are to be treated equally. Okay, and you should try to know what is the criteria of exclusion or inequality that has been met to this group of people in this SCDG group. What is those factors which makes them to be excluded. So try to address those, try to remove those exclusion factors and try to facilitate them by creating their own environment. That is what you need to look at. Empowering the women or girl child education must be your prime concern. Then it also talks about recognizing the special and critical role that women play in a society. That means even if you look at the family and health department, they say if you teach a girl child, okay, she is going to teach the entire family. So that is a girl, after she embraces the different rules. So she gets married, she becomes mother, then she raises children, and by doing all other activities, she is going to empower the entire family and insisting that even their children also is going to get education. They are also going to become economically powerful by acquiring related competency. So therefore, if women are educated, then we say the entire family becomes educated. So it is in that context. So we have to say women as the change agent are a crucial change agent in the system, and we need to address that and encourage that. Okay. And again, the policy also talks about encouraging the girls in these SC/DG groups. We need to look at it. Then the policy also says that the government of India should create a fund for gender inclusion on the normalizing school system. Okay, so that means here in every activities of the schooling, including the admission, including the any kind of competitions or examinations, the girls should be given prominence and equality should be ensured. For promoting those kinds of girls' participation in all these activities, if there are any economical barriers that comes into that, they should be removed by providing exclusive scholarship to girl child. Okay, and for providing those kinds of scholarships, you need to create exclusive fund for that. So they labeled it as gender inclusion fund. So if any attempt is made, if the girl child is dropped out and if she is brought into the school and it has any economical implications on the family, by using this fund, the family needs to certain extents can be addressed. So it is in that way, there is a creation of purpose fund for promoting the gender inclusion in all the activities and seeing that there is equal opportunity for girls in all spheres of activity. So that is the one of the important activity from it can be visualized from this policy. And it also says that state can also create such kind of funds and they can devise the ways and means of using that fund in a different ways. And it also says the fund will also enable states to support and scale effective community-based interventions. Okay, so that means a school alone cannot do that. So you have to involve community participation in schooling, and to ensure that community school participations are there, every school has been constituted with school management and development committee, SDMCs in Karnataka. In other state, it is SMCs. So where community and schools cooperations are to be established, and it is with that intention, community involvement has to be ensured, participation has to be ensured. So it is in that way, these factors are there. If such factors are there, you can also see how community people can be involved as an intervention factors in enhancing the girl child education and overcoming the gender disparities that is there in any particular community or community society factors can be seen. Then there is also provision to say that if some students are not having the hostel facilities or boarding facilities, residential facilities at home, and the school is at a distance and they cannot have that facilities, in such cases, hostel facilities has to be created for exclusively for such categories of people. So as you know, the different departments are building up these kinds of hostels and they are providing to those communities. And this policy says that whatever the facilities you are creating by whichever agencies and the departments, all of them should meet the standard of JNVs, that is Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas. So they are residential schools established in each of the districts across the country, except Tamil Nadu. Okay, Tamil Nadu has not permitted for establishing this JNVs in their state. So except JNV, all other states have JNVs there, and each district has one. Okay, and it is a residential setup. The students are enrolled from class 6 and go on to completion up to +2, and everything is provided free of cost, including no admission fees. So they are provided with the dresses, provided with the food, provided with the shelter. They are provided with the books, textbooks, pen, pencil, hair oil, shoes, socks, bags. Everything is provided. And even they are equipped with varieties of laboratories, including adult tinkering labs, for believing in that these JNVs are created exclusively to cater to rural talented people. So rural talent has to be identified, nurtured, and nourished in the JNVs, and that needs to be brought into national services. So that is the intention of creation of JNVs, and how they are functioning to that level standards. All the hostels and all residential school must match it. So that is JNVs are considered as the standards for all other residential setup to look forward and match to those standards. So it is in that way things has to be looked at it. So it is only condition for Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya is they are taken based on entrance exam, and condition is that the student must be studying in a rural background areas only, in schools only, and their economic criteria of the family must be below that. So only such students are selected, and they have been given free admission up to class 12th. Okay, similarly, when you come to Kasturiba Balika Vidyalayas, these are the other organizations which have been created exclusively for the girl child, promotion of girl child education in the country, and they are also functioning. And we have 2 or 3 types of KGVBs that are there. One, again, it is also intake is from class 6 onwards only, and it goes some KGVBs that goes up to class 12. Some are working up to class 10th. Okay, some doesn't have hostel facilities, some have hostel facilities and the schooling both together. So there are varieties of alternative mechanism being used to ensure that girl child education is promoted and ensured in all these aspects. Even in this KGVB also, every aspect is met by the government, and no charges are being made for these kinds of children who are studying in these scales. Again, these are exclusively for some sectors of socially backward groups. So this has to be looked at how government has already tried to address these issues in their own ways. Next, it is also saying that the present JNVs are not sufficient, and the Kendriya Vidyalayas that are there, which cater to the central government employees, which they believe that employees are transferred during any period of the academic duration. And when the children are shifted from one state to another state, they should not be hampered with education based on medium of instructions or the curriculum. State board or CBSE board or any other board curriculum should not hamper their education. So to overcome that, they have established their own mechanism of Kendriya Vidyalayas. So where ward can be transferred or parents can be transferred and admission can be sought at any time of the academic year. So it is in that perspective, Kendriya Vidyalayas have set up, and they are residential day schools from class 1 to 12. It is there offering science or arts or humanities. They are there. So we need to build schools of those standards. That is what the policy is talking about. And even exclusively, we have to see that the aspirational districts and special educational zones areas, these KVs and JNVs are set up. If they are already there, if required, another new one can be established. That is what this policy is insisting, and it is promoting. And Navodayas and Kendriya Vidyalayas are created by the central government. So the central government, if it feels, and the state government supports it by lending the land or leasing the land for a long term, then they will be able to create these kinds of institutions. Then there are preschool sections must also be there in this regular formal schooling from class 1. So they are saying that at least 1 year of preschool must be there in every school. So that means here now in Karnataka, we call it as Anganwadis. So in Delhi or any other place, they call it as Balvatikas. Okay. So these has to be looked at. They must be brought into the schooling system. Now they are functioning as an independent system outside the school complexes. Now that needs to be brought into the school system and it needs to be streamlined. So that is what they talk about in terms of opening of preschool section. At least 3 years of early child care education. Among that, at least 1 year must be in your formal school setup so that they become the feeders for your formal educational setup. So it is in that way they talk about this and they are in the process and they are going to create the pre-education sections in the formal setup. And you are aware that now all schools, KVs and JNVs are converted into PM Shri Vidyalayas. So where this PM Shri is a new initiative by the Government of India, which they empower the school by providing certain funds for creating the new infrastructures and additional facilities, which promotes again the quality education that they are trying to provide. And even some of the state schools